Buck, again, welcome to our weekly chat. We look forward to this time that we can talk with regards to sort of things that are happening in the fintech ecosystem and how we're able to help our clients and also add value to the industry. Something that is on the minds of many fintech founders is when is it the appropriate time that they need to pivot? Obviously, they could be running along with their journey, having a measure of success or not. But at some times, with regards to the fintech founder and within their company, they have to make that determination of do they need to stay on course of their journey or do they need to pivot? And that's a very weighty decision because that decision has a lot to do with the success of that fintech going on. And it's obviously important that it's not just a random selection or choice, but it's one that is well thought out, that's going to help that company in order to survive. So, what are some of the things that you've seen and some of your thoughts around a fintech or organization when it's time to pivot?
Sure, that's a great question, Wayne. So, pivoting is a requirement for all of us, including very large corporations and everyone. But for tech startups, fintechs, it is much more so because they still have probably an unproven business model. So they don't know where they are in the context of what the market needs. So probably the requirement is a lot higher. And you raised a very important point. It's a very difficult decision because it's in the founder's mind. Sometimes he or she may feel that he needs to be courageous and go on with his conviction, and that may be the right call. But sometimes he or she may be simply stupid because they have not understood what the market is looking for, or a new opportunity has come up which they are not aware of. And it might be the biggest mistake that they will make. So it's a difficult call, but pivot is not necessarily the bad thing. In fact, let us start with the good thing. You remember we spoke to our Canadian friend a couple of months ago,
Yeah.
and he had no plans to raise funds at a certain point in time on a journey. But an investor came along from Europe and said that, hey, I really like what you do. It fits well into my portfolio. So are you interested in taking my money? So he immediately took advantage of that, changed his plans, accelerated some of his expenditures, capital expenditures that he was working on. So that's a good pivot, that some opportunity comes along and you take advantage of that rather than saying that, no, my plan is to do this 6 months from today or 12 months from today, so I'm not going to do it now. That's a very difficult attitude that a founder can have. And like I said, it is the same problem whether it is IBM or a startup. If you can't pivot in time, you are definitely looking at some grief.
Yes, yes. We know there's so many challenges. I remember early in my working with fintechs, in fact, it was one of my initial clients. I had the opportunity, this was not a startup, but this is a late stage company that was involved in the credit card payment business. And so they have spent a number of years working in that space with regards to unsecured debt and so forth. They had a measure of success, interestingly enough, in this particular category. So they engaged with me in order to help them to see what they need to do to go to the next level. And in actuality, once I met with the CEO and went with the management team, I built together a SWOT analysis for them. And by interviewing the senior management team as well as the CEO, we realized with regards to the industry is changing. And the revenue associated in this product, in this category, is going to diminish. So what do? We basically realized the fact of the resources, the experience level of the resources, that this would be an excellent time to pivot. And we decided the pivoting would include working in using their IT resources in a way that they didn't see within the organization, but really how they could use the IT resources to help other companies build out their infrastructure. The company pivoted as a result of this, and their revenue quadrupled. And they were able to see that all because of the fact of being willing to make the change, be willing to look at the core competencies of what they were providing and looking how they could serve another purpose besides what they intended on, since the industry at that point was changing and they needed to be above the tide as opposed to being behind the tide. And that's what they were willing to do. But I always commend and think about this because years later I've been in contact with them. as they sent me an update not too long, a number of years back. But I really commend the CEO, and the management team on willing to make a change,
Exactly.
and willing to at least have a conversation about change, and not being wedded to their product and services, which they had received a measure of success throughout the years.
No, that's exactly the point. What you said, Wayne, that the willingness to change. And I will add one sentence to this, that sometimes the best time to change is when you don't need to.
Mm. Mm-hmm,
Okay.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't wait for a calamity to loom in front of you and only then make a decision to change. If
Yes.
you got a
Yeah.
good product, what you call a cash cow stage of your product, if you are in the cash cow stage, it's time to change. Just remember that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody is going to
Buck, we
come
have
along and
seen.
disrupt that cash cow,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and we have seen this in the ecosystem that exists, even when companies are late stage or companies that have been around for a number of years, looking at how they want to pivot by adding new product lines or getting involved in new industries or changing their revenue model or changing their product model. They should be able to do that. And I like what you said. Sometimes these changes are not necessarily to be done when they think it's time, but maybe even earlier. But it can certainly lead to success. And one of the things that we can continue to help with companies is to help them with their thinking, help them to understand and bring them what's going on in the industry, and able to see where some of those traps could be under the rocks in sort of way,
You use
and
the
help
right
them to
word.
alleviate some of the stress.
Yeah, use the. In fact, I try to explain the traps in two ways. Borrowing from the military terminology, the commandos and the Navy SEALs, those kind of folks. They talk about two things, the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns,
That's right.
and that's a big challenge. Do you first of all know what are the unknowns in your business today? Many founders may not even know that, hey, I'm doing this, I got these are my stakeholders in the industry. I need a good relationship with the gateway, I need a good relationship with the bank, I need a good relationship with a large bank that can become my customer, 3 4 people. And do you know which one of them is your weakest link? If it is not going to materialize, are you ready to change your business model on a dime to do something completely different? Because if you are not, then you are in serious trouble, because a bank, as when both of you and me have been doing this and know that a large bank may be interested in what you do, may be interested in accelerating what you do. And when they accelerate something, it may mean 12 to 18 months from their perspective. But for a startup, 12 to 18 months survival is impossible if there is no revenue.
That's right. That's right.
And the
That's
second
right.
part is then unknown unknowns, that you don't even know what you don't know. And how
That's
are you
right.
going to survive those kind of events?
Absolutely. That's absolutely. And so the list goes on and on. And so I'm glad, Buck, that we were able to just kind of bring this to the fore of our members and to our fintech community, that knowing or thinking if they need to pivot their strategy, their product and services, these are not necessarily bad discussions. In fact, they'd be quite empowering. But the nice thing is to think about what that could look like, what that journey could look like, all those things that can help make that company successful in the future and help them to avoid stress, roadblocks, as well as conflicts.
In fact, look at the tech company today, Wayne, and all tech companies who are following modern practices, agile, DevOps, and stuff like that. They actually have these days on which they deliberately disrupt their systems, shut down something, pull some wires, do some crazy stuff, and then they test how resilient they are. Can they keep the business running? Can they keep the technology running? And I asked them a simple question, that why don't you turn this back and put the spotlight on yourself rather than on your computer systems, and say that, hey, if my business something is going wrong today, what is my resilience level? Test that as much as you are testing your technology's resilience level. And ultimately, your resilience is far more important than your technology's resilience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
I think that we need a part two to this, because I think that we provided a lot of valuable information to our members.
Well, let us keep doing that, absolutely, because we keep listening to new people, we keep seeing some successes, we keep seeing some failures, and it is always there to share with all our members.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, Buck. I think this is a good update that we're able to communicate, but I think by just even this conversation alone, we may need we need a part two.
Let us do that. Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. All right.
thank you.